There are secrets inside Motown that no one dares to speak of. Not because they don't know, but because to speak them aloud means to destroy one's own soul. Jermaine Jackson, the brother of Michael Jackson and a core member of the Jackson 5, was once the most loyal son of that empire, raised in the glow of the spotlight and the shadow of power. But before he left Motown, he said something that silenced the entire label. Not all of us are human. Some are demons disguised as singers. He then named 10 people, 10 artists who once laughed with him, hugged him during recording sessions, and swore loyalty to the Motown family. Yet they were the ones behind betrayals, sudden deaths, and the trading of souls for fame. That list will be revealed right now. There was one night when Jermaine Jackson said he saw the innocence of Motown die before his eyes. That night was July 29, 1967, inside Studio A at Hitsville, USA, Detroit. The same room where songs once made the world believe that black artists could reach any dream. But that night, that dream was buried beneath the high heels of one woman, Diana Ross. Jermaine was only 13 then, often brought to the studio by his father because the Jackson 5 were preparing for a trial performance contract. He said the air at Motown felt strange that day, quiet, tense, and cold, as if someone had just committed a sin. He saw Florence Ballard, the founder of the Supremes, leaving the building with swollen eyes and her coat slipping off her shoulder. Inside, on Berry Gordy's desk, lay a freshly printed contract. Diana Ross and the Supremes. Jermaine remembered it vividly. Diana Ross sitting in the studio, not singing, not speaking, just staring at a poster on the wall showing 3 women: Florence, Mary Wilson, and herself. She took a black marker from her pocket, walked over, and drew a bold X over Florence's face. The act was silent, yet it made the entire room choke. Then she straightened her dress, told her assistant the session was postponed until the new group is ready, and walked away. That night, Florence was fired. Years later, Jermaine called that moment the first crack in Motown. To him, Ross didn't just remove a member, she erased the soul of the group. The Supremes had once symbolized unity among black women, but Diana turned it into her personal stage. After that, she became the uncontested face of the label, while anyone who resisted, like Mary Wilson, found their contracts cut or were pushed into oblivion. Jermaine said that years later, after marrying Hazel Gordy, Berry's daughter, he overheard a conversation between Diana and his father-in-law at a Beverly Hills party in 1973. Diana spoke softly but coldly. "Since Florence left, Motown belongs to me." Those words froze him. He realized the sweet poison of power was slowly consuming everyone in that empire. Florence Ballard died on February 24, 1976, in her old Detroit apartment after years of poverty and alcoholism. When Jermaine heard the news, he said he felt cold, as if hearing a voice being buried alive. To the world, Diana Ross is the queen of Motown. But to Jermaine, she proved that evil doesn't always need a knife. Sometimes it only takes a signature, a smile, and a soul willing to turn others into shadows beneath its feet. If Diana Ross was the manipulator in plain sight, then Smokey Robinson was the silent shadow Jermaine feared most, the man who didn't need to kill, because he already knew everyone's secrets. Even today, some in Motown still call him Gordy's listener. In the fall of 1969, at Hitsville's Detroit headquarters, Marvin Gaye and the Temptations suddenly had their new albums delayed. No one knew why. Days later, Berry Gordy called a private meeting. Personal recordings, complaints, and even love letters were read aloud in front of everyone. People looked around, wondering how things only a few knew had leaked. After the meeting, Jermaine overheard a young employee whisper, "Smokey knows everything. He's got the keys to the archives." As Gordy's best friend, Smokey held immense power. He always appeared with a gentle smile, kind eyes, and a honey-smooth voice. But Jermaine saw through it. That was a mask. Whenever an artist rebelled or wanted to leave the label, Smokey was summoned to have a talk. Soon after, that artist's career would quietly vanish. No contracts, No songs, no questions asked. Rumors spread that Smokey had given Gordy a list of troublesome artists, including Marvin Gaye and Florence Ballard, in exchange for his promotion to creative director. A Motown engineer once swore he saw Smokey carrying a stack of files out of the secretary's office late at night and placing them into a silver car trunk. The next day, 2 singers were cut from Motown's release list. By the 1990s, after leaving Motown and becoming a minister, Smokey publicly confessed, "I once lived in lies and betrayal." But he never said whom he betrayed. Jermaine believed it was the confession of a man who had heard every sigh of the souls, yet never warned them. Smokey Robinson didn't fall because of drugs or money. He fell because of silence, because of the sweet power of standing between light and darkness. Jermaine said, "At Motown, his smile was the lullaby of the devil." While others were publicly destroyed, Smokey stood on stage, smiling softly, singing of love, while behind him an entire generation of artists had been erased from history. Jermaine Jackson once said, "There are people God touched, then pulled his hand away halfway." And in Motown, no one bore that wound deeper than Marvin Gaye. He was the soul genius, the voice that prayed for a better world, yet his own life proved how an angel can fall right on the altar of faith. Summer 1973, inside a wooden cabin in Topanga Canyon, California, Marvin was recording "Let's Get It On." The studio was filled with incense, candles, and marijuana smoke. He called that track a prayer of the flesh. Behind the glass stood Janice Hunter, just 17, the daughter of a black and Mexican model. She silently watched the man nearly 20 years older than her, his eyes kind yet dangerous. Their relationship began that night, between music and smoke. Years later, Jermaine read Marvin's diary and found a single scrawled line, "I pray before every sin." They married in 1977 when Marvin was already drowning in addiction and paranoia. He would kneel in prayer one moment, then scream and throw things the next. Janice said that whenever he suspected her of cheating, he'd blast Sexual Healing at full volume, the song the world saw as redemption. But to her, it was a threat. Marvin believed that sex was his only way to meet God, and the more he sought it, the deeper he fell. Jermaine recalled seeing Marvin once leaving a closed studio at Motown Hollywood, his shirt torn, eyes red, murmuring prayers. In his hand was a Bible dusted with white powder. He said, "I just spoke with God. He told me to keep singing." To Jermaine, this was no longer the hero of soul, but a man using faith as a hallucinogen. By the early 1980s, Marvin lived in isolation, convinced he was being watched. He slept with a gun under his pillow and saw demons in his own reflection. On April 1st, 1984, his birthday, he was shot and killed by his own father, Reverend Marvin Gaye Sr., after a violent argument. The news left Jermaine silent for hours. Later, in an interview, he said, "He died trying to baptize himself in desire." To the world, Marvin Gaye was the voice of love and liberation. To Jermaine, he was proof that when faith and lust mix, music stops being prayer and becomes a sacrifice of the soul. On Jermaine Jackson's list, there was only one man he called King. But it wasn't a title of glory, it was a throne built on the bones of dozens of souls. Berry Gordy, the founder of Motown, was hailed across America as the genius who opened the gates for black music to conquer the mainstream. But to Jermaine, he was the preacher of darkness, the man who learned to record human souls and sell them back to the world. Jermaine said that in February 1973, when the Jackson 5 were at their peak, he attended Berry's birthday party at his Beverly Hills mansion. Outside, luxury cars lined the street. Inside were Motown's biggest stars, Diana Ross, Smokey Robinson, Rick James, Marvin Gaye, all laughing, toasting, and praising the boss who built the Black Dream. But when the night ended and the music stopped, Jermaine saw something haunting. Berry Gordy sitting alone in his office, staring at a list of Motown artists, with notes of debts, show counts, and recording sessions logged like an inventory sheet. "That's when I understood," Jermaine said. He didn't produce music, he produced souls. Motown operated like a factory. Every song, every voice, every drop of sweat belonged to Gordy. Artists were bound by lifetime contracts and forbidden to take their work elsewhere. Those who resisted were erased. Mary Wells, who gave Motown its first hit, was banned from radio after demanding ownership of her songs. Florence Ballard died in poverty. Marvin Gaye was suppressed for years just because he wanted to sing about war and God. Later, many claimed Gordy controlled not just with contracts, but with fear and sex. He was involved with Diana Ross, Mary Wells, and several younger singers, women who traded their bodies to stay afloat. A former secretary revealed that on June 12, 1969, she was forced to sign a non-disclosure agreement after witnessing a violent incident in the studio, where a young singer was stripped for refusing an overworked schedule. Rumors of the Motown Circle, a secret inner group led by Gordy and a few confidants, still echo around Detroit. They supposedly met once a month behind closed doors, deciding who would rise and who would vanish. "Evil doesn't dance on stage," Jermaine once said. "It signs the checks." By the end of his life, Berry Gordy was isolated inside the empire he built. His family fought over money, and former artists refused to mention his name in interviews. His reputation cracked, and his portraits in the Hitsville Museum were quietly taken down. Jermaine believed Gordy had sold the very thing he once vowed to protect, the soul of black music. And once a soul is sold, music becomes nothing more than the faint sigh of those who once believed in heaven. If Marvin Gaye was a soul torn between God and flesh, then David Ruffin was proof of what Jermaine Jackson called arrogance turned into madness. The man whose voice made the world tremble was, behind the curtain, a demon in the face of an angel, a man who believed fame gave him permission to do the cruelest things imaginable. In 1968, Detroit was glowing with light, and the Temptations were the greatest male group Motown ever had. Each night, thousands of fans screamed Ruffin's name, tall, handsome, with that signature raspy voice. But backstage, the group was falling apart. Ruffin demanded to rename the band David Ruffin and the Temptations, demanded to fly separately, and wanted the spotlight only on him. When his demands were denied, he lost control, threw microphones, punched walls, and declared he would teach the world who the real star is. Jermaine said that year he accompanied his father to Motown studio to watch a recording session and saw Ruffin arrive 3 hours late, bringing 2 women and a suitcase full of cocaine. During the session, he refused to sing, stopping musicians mid-performance to adjust the mic and shouting, "I am the voice of God. No one teaches me how to sing." After that day, the group asked the label to fire him. But the real tragedy happened behind closed doors. Ruffin was infamous for his violent relationship with Tammy Terrell, the young singer who performed duets with Marvin Gaye. Friends said Tammy often appeared bruised but never spoke of it. On October 29, 1967, during the Motown Revue concert in Philadelphia, Tammy collapsed on stage. She was later diagnosed with a brain tumor, but Marvin Gaye always believed the physical and emotional abuse from Ruffin had broken her. When Tammy died, Marvin lost his faith in love, and Jermaine said, "That was the first sin that cracked Motown's soul." After being fired from the Temptations, Ruffin sank into heroin addiction. Once, in a hallucination, he blocked his former bandmate's car on the highway, jumped onto the roof, and screamed, "I am the Temptations." The press called him a mad star, but Jermaine called him a singing ghost. On June 1, 1991, David Ruffin was found dead in a limousine in Philadelphia from a drug overdose. The driver dumped his body outside a hospital and drove away. No one claimed the body for 3 days. To Jermaine, it was poetic justice. The man who thought himself a god died as one abandoned by all. David Ruffin left behind an immortal voice and a cursed soul. In the world of Motown, he proved that beauty, once poisoned by fame, becomes a monster. There was only one name Jermaine Jackson described with 2 words: pure evil. Not because he killed people, but because he made others kill their own souls just to be near him. That was Rick James, the man who turned funk into a ritual of sin and music into a spell that made people forget they were human. Summer 1983. At Rick James's Hollywood Hills mansion, the LAPD received an anonymous call about a 3-day party where no one was allowed to leave. When they raided the house, they found a room filled with cocaine smoke, red lights, and dozens of unconscious bodies around the pool. In the center of the living room stood Rick, half naked, clutching a microphone, still singing Super Freak in a drug trance. That scene later became known in police files as the Red Room Ritual. But the true horror came in 1991 when Rick and his girlfriend Tanya Hijazi were charged with kidnapping and torturing a young woman for 3 days. According to testimony, Rick forced her to use drugs, tied her with electric cords, and blasted old Motown records at full volume. When questioned, Rick said coldly, "That wasn't torture, that was a funk experience." That chilling defense made Jermaine Jackson shiver. To him, Rick James was no longer human. He was a demon raised by Motown and released to teach the world how to worship desire. In the early 1980s, Rick was the brightest star under Gordy Records, a Motown subsidiary. He sang of freedom, sex, and pleasure, but behind that glamour were endless drug binges, violent nights, and bizarre ceremonies his friends called the Black Mass of Funk. They said he would light candles, play Marvin Gaye's music, sprinkle cocaine on his lover's skin, and declare, "God is listening." Many young artists were pulled into his orbit. Among them was Teena Marie, the white singer Rick mentored. She believed their music was liberation. But Jermaine said, Rick didn't free anyone, he just dragged them down to hell with him. His parties weren't celebrations, they were experiments in power, how far he could push people to abandon morality just to please him. After being sentenced to 2 years in prison in 1993, Rick emerged frail, his voice nearly gone. Yet he proudly said, "I met the devil, and I am him." Jermaine recalled turning off the TV after that interview and whispering, "No, Rick, you just don't realize the devil already won." Rick James died in 2004 in his Burbank, California apartment, surrounded by old posters, pill bottles, and Motown vinyls. No one arrived in time. To the world, he was the king of funk. To Jermaine, he was proof that when music stops talking about love and starts worshiping lust, the stage becomes the devil's church, and Rick James sang its hymns. If Rick James was the demon, Teena Marie was the first soul he stole. Jermaine Jackson once said, "There are 2 kinds of people in Motown, the ones consumed by darkness and the ones who walk into it willingly." Teena belonged to the latter. She entered Rick's world in 1979 at 23, a petite white girl with a black woman's voice, hailed by Berry Gordy as the perfect cultural experiment. But Jermaine knew Motown was never just about music. When Teena met Rick in Studio B, it was as if she were hypnotized. He spoke of sound, energy, and sex as a frequency to communicate with the universe. And she believed him. In the years that followed, they became the strange duo of funk. But behind the fiery duets were nights of darkness. At Rick's Leopard House mansion in Hollywood, Teena joined energy transmission rituals, where LSD was used to open the creative gate. They believed if they reached orgasm in rhythm with the drums, their souls would leave their bodies and sing for them. One studio assistant claimed to have seen Teena kneeling in a smoky room, singing in a trance, as Rick sprinkled cocaine around her like a priest performing a sacred rite. Jermaine said that in 1985, at a Motown party in Los Angeles, he saw Teena again, disoriented, pale, shaking, and speaking of Rick as if he still controlled her from afar. When asked why she didn't leave, she replied, "It's his pain, not mine." Jermaine said it was the most terrifying sentence he had ever heard because it was the voice of someone who had already lost herself. After Rick's arrest in 1991, Teena fell into depression. She kept singing, but her voice trembled, thin, fragile, as if her soul had slipped away. Concerts failed, contracts were canceled. In 2004, when Rick died, she wore black, stood silently at his funeral for an hour, then disappeared from the media. In her final years, Teena lived alone in her Pasadena apartment, surrounded by vinyls and unfinished music sheets. Neighbors said they often heard faint singing around 3 a.m., a hoarse voice repeating the same line, "Fire and Desire." On December 26, 2010, she was found dead in her sleep, alone. No one knew exactly when. To Jermaine Jackson, Teena was the cursed muse, a woman who loved so deeply she turned love into her own ritual of self-destruction. Rick didn't kill her. She died because she loved him too much to live without him. Jermaine wrote in his notebook, "Evil doesn't just kill, it kills the ones who love the evil." In the world of Motown, there were betrayers, the betrayed, and those who stayed silent to survive. Mary Wilson was the third kind, the beauty who knew too much but chose silence until it was too late. Jermaine Jackson said, "Mary knew the truth but waited until everyone was dead to speak." In 1967, when Florence Ballard was pushed out of the Supremes by Diana Ross, Mary was the only one present for both moments, the birth and the collapse. She saw Diana sign the new contract with Berry Gordy, saw Florence escorted out of the studio, and heard the door close like a sentence. But she said nothing. Mary smiled beside Diana during interviews, nodded, and helped erase Florence from public memory. Later, Motown rewarded her. She got solo parts, tours, and the image of Diana's loyal friend. Jermaine said he once heard Berry Gordy remark, "Mary is the witness, but she'll never open her mouth." And indeed, for decades, she didn't. Yet silence didn't save her. It became the weight that haunted her until the end. In 1986, Mary Wilson released her memoir, Dream Girl, My Life as a Supreme. It was marketed as The Truth Behind the Glamour. But when the original manuscript leaked, dozens of pages were missing, sections about Diana's secret meetings with Berry, altered contracts, and Florence's last desperate calls for help. Mary said, "Motown's lawyers made me cut it." Jermaine thought the truth was simpler. She was afraid. There's an untold story. In 1993, during a televised Supremes reunion, Diana Ross hugged Mary on stage, crying before millions. The audience applauded. But after the show, Mary walked backstage, pale, and told her manager, "I feel like I just betrayed Florence again." That line was never aired. In her final years, Mary kept up her image as the Elder Supreme, speaking of love, peace, and nostalgia. But friends said when she drank, she'd cry, whisper Florence's name, and repeat, "I should have spoken sooner." On February 8, 2021, Mary Wilson died in a car accident near Las Vegas. In the trunk, police found a notebook containing a draft for her next memoir. The title read only one word, Confession. To Jermaine Jackson, Mary wasn't a demon. She was the beautiful sinner of silence. Because in Motown, not speaking the truth was its own form of betrayal. "She didn't kill anyone," Jermaine wrote, "but she let the lies live. And that is the hardest sin to cleanse." Jermaine Jackson once said, "Stevie Wonder is the only man who can sing with God, but sometimes he forgets he isn't him." In Jermaine's evil list, Stevie wasn't wicked in the usual sense. He didn't abuse or betray anyone. His evil was sanctified arrogance, a blind man who saw too much until divine light turned into the darkness of control. In the 1970s, Stevie Wonder was Motown's perfect face, a blind genius, pure voice, the embodiment of faith and freedom. But behind the scenes, a different story unfolded. As his power and belief merged, he began to see himself as God's communicator. Each album required his musicians to feel the holy energy before playing. Those who didn't were fired. Sound engineers called them spiritual sessions, recordings where no one could speak, only pray at Stevie's command. Jermaine once witnessed one such session in May 1982 at Wonderland Studios in Los Angeles. Stevie sat in the center, hands on his keyboard, surrounded by singers standing still as if in church. He said, "God is sending the music down. Anyone impure will ruin it." A young singer, trembling, asked to step out. Stevie stopped playing and said, "You've let the devil's energy in." The next day, she was dropped from the project. Jermaine said that's when Stevie began turning faith into domination. He took in young talents, fed and taught them, but also controlled them with promises of being chosen by God. Anyone who left was labeled a betrayer of the Lord. A musician who worked with him said Stevie demanded everyone write, "God is watching," on every sheet of music. No one dared refuse. "I used to admire him," Jermaine said, "until I realized he wasn't singing for God, he was singing to be worshipped." Stevie believed his mission was to save souls, but that conviction left him isolated. Friends drifted away. Colleagues resigned. He lived enclosed in his own world, surrounded by instruments, prayers, and echoes of the past. In his later interviews, Stevie often said he heard God's voice clearer than ever, but his blind eyes seemed weary. Those close to him claimed he trusted no one anymore, only the voice inside his head. Jermaine called it the arrogance of light, when someone believes they've found truth so deeply that they no longer see, the darkness swallowing them. To the world, Stevie Wonder was a kind-hearted genius. To Jermaine, he was the man who saw too much and lost his soul in the light he thought was divine. In Jermaine Jackson's list, the final name was the one that terrified him most, not because of cruelty, but because of the beauty of his collapse. Michael Jackson, the brother he once protected, didn't become a demon in the traditional sense. He became something far more haunting, an angel who learned to live in the dark. Born in 1958 in Gary, Indiana, Michael grew up in poverty and violence. His father, Joseph Jackson, controlled his sons like machines for money. When the Jackson 5 signed with Motown in 1969, Michael was only 11. Berry Gordy and Diana Ross instantly recognized his potential. They made him the savior face of the label, innocent, adorable, and easily controlled. Behind every smile on TV were 14-hour rehearsals, midnight tapings, and threats for even a single missed note. Motown called it training. Jermaine called it brainwashing. Diana Ross, appointed as Michael's mentor, taught him how to move, smile, and speak. She turned the shy black child into a flawless performer. But in Jermaine's eyes, their bond quickly crossed the line. Between Diana and Michael existed a strange attachment, part maternal, part possessive. When Michael was 20, they appeared in Beverly Hills, holding hands like lovers. The press called it a divine connection of music. Jermaine called it a coronation ritual. Even after leaving Motown, Michael couldn't escape Diana's or Berry's shadows. He reinvented himself, changing his voice, his face, his skin, erasing every trace of his controlled childhood. Every time he looked in the mirror, he saw the people who used him staring back. He tried to destroy them through surgery, drugs, and illusion. The evil in Michael didn't come from malice. It came from obsession with perfection, the desire to become something no longer human. By the 1980s, Michael became a global icon, but the rumors around him grew darker. In his Neverland mansion, which he called a paradise of childhood, former staff described long, eerie nights, Michael playing old Motown records, pacing the room with distant eyes, whispering the names of dead artists. A maid claimed he kept a locked cabinet filled with photos of Diana Ross, Berry Gordy, Marvin Gaye, and Rick James, all marked with red ink. When asked why, he said simply, "They're family." As time passed, Michael drifted from reality. He spoke of Motown soul still living through my music. People close to him said during late recording sessions, he'd ask the engineers to turn off all lights, play "I'll Be There," and sit motionless for hours. Once they found him unconscious on the floor, surrounded by melted candles. In 1993, the first child abuse allegations broke out. The world saw a bizarre, broken man, but Jermaine saw someone who had turned fear into instinct. He no longer knew the line between love and control, innocence and desire. What the world saw as sin, Michael saw as ritual, his way of saving himself. When the scandal resurfaced in 2003, Michael lived like prey, avoiding the public, sleepless, trapped between mirrors and pills. Friends said he believed Motown's invisible hand still watched him, trying to erase him from memory. A year before his death, he bought back the old Jackson 5 master tapes, then had them destroyed. Jermaine called it an act of self-exile from history. On June 25, 2009, Michael Jackson died in his Holmby Hills mansion. Police found on his desk a half-written note. The final line read, "The music stopped talking to me." It wasn't the drugs that killed him. It was the silence after a lifetime surrounded by his own voice. Jermaine called it a holy death, not because Michael was pure, but because he carried all of Motown's sins: ambition, control, desire, and the loneliness of being deified. Beneath the dazzling lights that once mesmerized the world, Michael was the final embodiment of a cursed empire, the boy who never grew up, the man who never truly lived, and the soul that never found peace. Jermaine ended his list with a note. They are proof that light and darkness always coexist within a single soul. In his eyes, Motown was never just a record label. It was an experiment about humanity. What happens to a soul when it is thrown into the light too soon? Diana betrayed to survive. Marvin prayed through sin. Smokey betrayed through silence. Berry ruled like a god. Rick James turned funk into a ritual of desire. Teena Marie died for love. Mary Wilson stayed silent until the end. Stevie Wonder locked himself inside a sacred illusion. And finally, Michael, the culmination of them all, became the mirror reflecting Motown's total corruption. When people listen to those songs today, they still hear love, sweetness, and words of peace. But Jermaine reminded us that beneath every note lies a cost: tears, blood, and souls sold to sustain an empire. Motown didn't kill anyone. It simply gave people the chance to destroy themselves, with fame, with sex, with silence. And if Michael Jackson was the final angel, then he was also the final proof that even light carries the scent of hell. If you want to hear the secrets that were never revealed, the files no one has ever dared to open, leave a comment, hit subscribe, and get ready for the next chapter.